I gave all you guys a white object. And again, my colors on the Elmo aren't as great as the camera isn't super awesome with color. But it's decent. So you have a white object, you have a green or yellow object, one of the two. So like something like this or a lemon or something like that. And then I try to give you all a red object. So I'm going to do them object by object and separate them. You can do that too if you want to take everything else off, or if you want to leave them all as a group and then just actually try to draw the still life. However you want to do it is fine by me. Which one do you guys want to start with? What color? Red. Okay. So we'll start. I happen to have a tomato, but some of you guys have apples, some of you guys have tomatoes. And so the first thing, and this is going to be familiar to you because we did colored pencil already. The first thing that we're going to want to do when we pick out our colors for the red object is that we're going to want to find the local color. I'm also going to need white. As I said, everybody's going to need white because we're going to use the highlight eventually. But then as I look at the object, I'm going to try to decide what my analogous colors will be to the local color to kind of add some richness and tone. So I think I'm going to find either like a yellow or an orange for like the highlights. And you can try different ones. And then I think for the shadow down here, I'm going to go to the darker side and find like a purple would be ideal. I don't love the purple that I see here because it's too like bright. So I think I'm going to mix the purple by actually finding a blue. I'll try this blue. So when I mix the red and the blue, I'm going to get like a purpley tone for some shadows. Okay, so now the first thing, and we don't have the pencils today, but if you have a white pastel and you want to draw it out first, you can. If you want to draw it with the local color, you can do that as well. I'm going to start with the white. I'm just going to set mine up over here. I want to kind of put it in a spot where I'm going to get a cast shadow. Now, just a reminder that you guys in the camera are going to see straight down onto the object, and my point of view is from the side. So what I draw is going to look a little different on the paper, but the concepts are going to be the same. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is do an outline. Now remember, I've got to draw 3 other objects on here, right? So I'm going to make it small. But I'm going to look at the object and I'm just going to kind of try to draw the contour of it. And I don't care if you use the red or the white or whatever you want. It's not a perfectly round object. It's got a little lumps and bumps to it. And then from my point of view, I do see the top of the tomato, and it is just plastic fruit. Most tomatoes would actually have a stem. But I see that, which is the top of the tomato. Sort of like that. So that's my rough outline. Now, you guys have already done outlines on your still life in white. Your object, unless it's white, you shouldn't see the white when you're done. So I'm going to end up covering that all up, which is why it doesn't matter if you choose white or red for this, because the white's going to get covered. But I chose white because you guys have already done white on your still life so that you can see how I'm going to cover it up. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my local color, which is red, because I got a red tomato. So I am going to add the red. When I grade these, what I'm going to be looking at for the color grade is just like with the colored pencil. I'm going to be looking that you guys used your analogous colors to mix, and I'm going to be looking to see that you guys added a highlight and a shadow on each object. So I'm not trying to cover up my lines just yet. I'm just adding the local color. I can still see my outlines at this point. So after I've put down the layer of local color, then I'm going to start using my analogous colors to add some form as highlights and shadows. So I'm going to start with the highlights, so I'm going to choose my orange. And along the top and the shoulder of the tomato, I'm getting sort of like a mix of color and some light is shining on it. So I'm going to add orange to my red. On the top and the shoulder. Now, I think you guys are hopefully probably starting to notice that you don't have a lot of control in terms of like you do with a sharpened pencil. Like a colored pencil, you can get it really clean, really right up to the line. This is a little bit looser of a style. There's lots of choices you can make, right? So if you don't have an orange, you can mix orange by using yellow. And then you just add more red. If you have an orange, that's the one that's closest to it on the color wheel to make a red orange. So that's closer to analogous, but you can mix the colors to get where you want to be if you need to. Okay, so now I said to you guys before, after the video, the guy said that you can finger smudge. I do finger smudge sometimes, but I find if I over smudge, I end up filling this texture of the paper in and it gets kind of smudgy and sloppy. I like to go back to my local color and add, kind of instead of treating it like I'm adding color, which I will be, I'm pretending it's like a blending stick. Okay? So I'm going back in. Now I'm going to start getting a little more specific, and I'm going to try to cover up that white that I started with. So I'm not pushing as hard as I was the first time because I'm more trying to blend. The orange and the red. And I'm just kind of like moving the color around. I can go back and forth with the orange and the red as many times as I want. So if I do that and then I feel like I've taken away too much orange, I'll just go back with my orange and I'll add more. And then I'll go back with the red. Just because you put a color down on an object, it doesn't mean you're finished with that object. Okay, so now I have a little bit of a highlight. Now I'm going to go the other direction and look for shadow. And I've got a couple different blues, so I might kind of play. I think I'm going to start with this darker blue because my ultimate goal is to make this like purplish. So I'm going to mix, but I didn't like my color. The purples that I have are a little bit too red purple or red violet. I want something a little more blue violet. So I'm going to use, these are like Spider-Man colors. I'm going to get into the shadow area and I'm going to put some blue. The cool thing with pastels is you really can't mess up, because if you mess up, you can just go over it again with a different color. You have a gum eraser, you can erase somewhat if you need to, but you can then just go back over the top with different colors and make it work. So this blue is too harsh. Like I said, my ultimate goal is to make it purple. So again, I'm going to go back to my local color, and I'm going to use it again like a blending stick. And just try to mix that blue in. So that it reads more as a purple. So that's a good example of me not having the color I exactly wanted, so I created it. Now my tomato has some, green stuff on the top, and that stem would be green, so this is not going within analogous colors. This is just other colors that I see on there. So if you have an apple that's like half of it's kind of turning yellow or green or something, and you want to add that detail, I'm mixing a little yellow in because the green is just a little too forest green for me. I want it a little more earthy. Earth tone. And I want that shadow to play off where that stem is, so I'll add a little of that blue. Any final blending I want to do, I'll go back with a local color.
What do you do with all the chalk that's like
gathering here?
Yeah.
I just blow it away. That's
gathering on the floor now.
Well, yeah, they're gonna mop our floors tonight.
Is that okay?
It's okay. Yeah, we're gonna get messy. It gets a little messy with all the dust. That's why, if I said if anything's going to get messy, it's going to be like the sides of your hand and your forearms, because there's going to end up being chalk dust. And I am going to teach you guys how to clean up the desks, but there is going to end up being like chalk dust on the desk. Now this is an example where I might use a pop of black. But generally speaking, I try not to go overkill with the black. I want it to read more as a rich purple tone or rich blue tone. I like it when I see some mark making in the pastel. So I don't like the final thing. I don't like to blend with my finger. I like to see the mark of the pastel. So I'm going to leave that show. All right. 2 final things I have to do before this tomato is finished. The first one is to add that really bright highlight that I see. So those shines, those pops of white. So I saved this for the last thing. And I'm looking for those areas where I see that glint of reflection. Sometimes you'll see like a really sharp pop, and sometimes you'll see just more of a softer tone. So try to match that feeling. But that's kind of what makes it look like shiny, like a juicy fruit. So you need that last little pop. And then the second thing that I need to do is the negative space to clean up the edges. So a lot of times you have you struggle with oh man, I can't get that edge as clean as I want. How do I get it looking neater? And I talked about eliminating, that white edge, and I still have a little bit of white showing. So this is where you start drawing negative space. Now, today your negative space is white because it's sitting on a white piece of paper. When you go to your still life, your negative space might be blue, it might be brown, and it might be white. So if you want to choose white today, because that's what it's sitting on, you can. But if you don't, and you want to try with whatever color your still life is, that's okay too. So I think for this one, I'm going to go blue because I know one of the backgrounds is blue. Now with this one, I'm going to be really careful. This is where my edges meet. So the way that I'm going to clean up the edges of the tomato is through the negative space. And then wherever I see the cast shadow on the ground, I'm going to add it. So I'm going to take my darker blue, because I chose blue. And in the place where I see that cast shadow, I'm going to add a little pop of the darker. Now again, if you need to use just a little bit of black to deepen the tone, you can. Sometimes it really helps with the contrast. But I always go back with that blue and blend it so it doesn't read so cold. So I'm just going to move over to another section of my paper, and it doesn't matter if it's messy. Like I said, that's the cool thing about pastels, is this is all going to get mixed in and blend together, and you want that because if you think about how light affects objects, if you have a red tomato here and there's a white object next to it, the light is probably going to reflect some of the red onto the white object, so it actually creates color balance to have these colors mixed throughout. So my neat freaks, take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. It's okay that it's messy like this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do again is just draw it. And this time I am going to use white because it's not only my local color. So there's my sphere, and then I'm going to fill it in. We don't have analogous colors to go with white. That's why this becomes difficult. Because there's no lighter white and there's no darker white. I mean, I guess some people would say maybe gray. But gray just ends up playing off. It's very cold. So we want to add some warmer tones to it. So this is where we're going to use our blues and our purples. I might use a little bit of black, but I'm mostly looking at my cool colors.
Are we supposed to draw this like in 3D?
Well, we're gonna, it's 2D, but by adding highlight and shadow, we're gonna create the illusion that it's three-dimensional. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. So it's right now, it doesn't look at all 3D, it's just flat. So this is why we have to add the highlights and shadows, and that's why it's part of your grade. It's because you want it to look three-dimensional. So with this, I'm looking at shadow. So, and how the light kind of wraps around the ball. So I think I'm going to stick with the Spider-Man-y blue that I used with the last one. And I should say also that on your still life, you're going to have the same light source on all objects. So whatever you use for your shadows, you know, like cast shadows on one, you shouldn't have one that looks green and one that looks purple and one that looks blue. They should have some harmony. They should make sense together. So it makes sense that I would use the same blue that I used on my tomato if they were part of the same still life. And I see a shadow wrapping around the ball here. I can play with different blues. This one's kind of purple. I can mix different tones in there. Then I'm going to go back to my local color and I'm going to soften this. Now again, I'm not using this so much as a white pastel anymore. I'm thinking about it as more like a blending stick. And what really is going to make this pop is, again, my negative space. So I did my first negative space blue. I think just for those of you guys out there who have like the brown still life for your real thing, I'm going to switch it up for this one and go with more like a brown background, like the other cloth. So I have this yellow, and I'm going to really define the edges of the object. This is like an and then cast shadow. This looks to be the darkest brown I have, so I'm going to use this. But it's not exactly the color that I'm going for, so I'm going to again use a tiny bit of black. To mix it in. And go back to the local color to soften the edges. Now again, if you're working on a yellow cloth and you have a white object, you're probably going to see, and I'm literally not working on this. I just chose this color because when you guys get to this still life, some of you guys have it, but you will probably notice some of the tone of the backdrop within the object. It creates some harmony to see that yellow, not only in the background, but in the object. I just made that up because, like I said, I'm not really looking.
What color did you use for the shadow thing?
Brown, but it was a little more red-brown than I wanted, so I added a little bit of black.